Good evening. Welcome tonight to our new podcast, Wounded Hearts, Wounded Churches. Topics include sexual abuse, religious abuse, church division, and addictions at large. We offer live counseling sessions and a continuum and meaningful question and answers. Our focus and our desire here is to promote three things. Number one, forgiveness, healing, reconciliation. That's our spiritual motto here. Forgiveness, healing, reconciliation. The team includes Lita Williams. She is our personal director of activities. Linda Holmes is our LPN. Technical director is Miss Tennille. And myself, I'm Prince, licensed counselor, founder of Antioch Youth Center, retired. The contents that we discuss, opinions and views, are those of our guests, may not necessarily reflect our position on things, but we do want to give people a chance to have their platform to discuss what they're doing and how we can, again, promote those three things: reconciliation, healing, and forgiveness. The things we discuss are a little sensitive, so we advise you to listen with discretion. And tonight we have two very special guests. Number one, Pastor Brown, and also our listeners. You can join us if you would. Go to YouTube and put in Church of God in Macon, Georgia. Then you'll see the Recovery from Division live, and just click that. We began discussion tonight with some statistics that are quite sobering. Statistics indicate clearly that church splits occur more in Western cities in the nation, about 17% of those church splits, whereas in the South, it's a bit smaller, only about 12% of churches split. Large cities, 13% churches split, whereas in small towns, 7%. And that comes from the Hartford Institute. David Roseanne gave those statistics. Also, we have some information from David Rainey on church splits. He's a counselor for churches. And what he's found out is the following. I'm quoting: after a church is split, the congregation usually dies. And he also states in his information that there's no winner in a church split. So with that in mind, we want to begin our introduction of our other special guest, again, Pastor Brown, minister, pastor, 30 years, Church of God. And tell us about your internet activities, YouTube or Facebook, if you would please, Brother Brown.
Thank you, Pastor. Yeah, right now we are pastoring through the internet, and we are preaching 7 days a week on Facebook Live at noontime. And you would go under Larry Brown, Wynne, Arkansas. And we've been doing this for about 3 years. And usually I sing a solo and we give a message, but we have a pretty good audience. But this is 7 days a week at noontime. And then also we are on YouTube. You can find us under Larry Brown Church of God, and also on the Instagram, Larry Brown. And there's one more, which I can't think of right now. But anyway, we're out there, but mainly on Facebook at noontime. You can find it, Larry Brown, Wynne, Arkansas, at 12 noon every day, live preaching 7 days a week. We appreciate that. You're welcome to join us.
Very good. I want to go into our questions. And again, listeners used to chime in. You can, again, go to YouTube. And in the box there, Church of God in Macon, Georgia, you'll see Recovery from Church Division. Follow the prompts. But tonight, thank you, Brother Brown, being here with us. We appreciate that.
Sure.
Glad you're here. It's an honor to meet you finally, face to face. Well, I guess face to face close as we can on the internet, but it's wonderful.
Yes.
Our first question: why are church wounds so hard to heal? Why are church wounds so hard to heal?
Brother, that is a very, very good question. And it's to me, it's one of the worst kind of wounds. And the reason why I say that, I want to give an illustration. They sent me to a city to carry mail one time. And when I get out the truck, I must have saw about maybe 20 or 30 dogs under a shady tree. And I'm thinking, there's no dog catchers here. Well, Spirit of God spoke to me. You need to pick up a stick, put it in your mailbag. That thought was injected in my mind, and I did. 4 hours later, I was walking through, I guess what we would call the project area. I get out in the open, and there was a Rockwilder and a pit bull. They both charged me, the pit bull in the front. And I was trained never run from a dog. So I positioned my feet so I could have strength in my shoulder. I took out my stick, and the stick happened to have a long, maybe 8-inch nail in it. And I knew I only had one shot. And the pit bull always go at your ankle. And when he got right near my ankle, I put that nail in his temple. He let out such a scream, he scared the other dog. So he turned away. The point I'm trying to bring out is this. A bite from the worst dog you could think of could never hurt as worse as the teeth of a tail barrier. You can easily heal your wound from that vicious dog, but the wounds from the teeth of a tail bearer, those are wounds it's going to take the grace of God to heal. It's deep. It's deep. It's very deep. And the person who suffered the hurt, it's like they had a bite from two devils, if we can say that, because the talebearer had the devil in his tongue. The listener had the devil in his ear. And whoever was hurt are deeply hurt, because those are two bites by the devil. So those wounds, brother, are very deep and serious wounds. And some never get healed.
After a church split, how can people reunite or come back together in fellowship, or can they?
All right. Going back to the root of before the split, from what I've seen through the Spirit of God is this. People who've been in a congregation a long time naturally learn leadership capabilities. But here's the problem, Pastor. I don't care how much they've learned, they're not a leader. Because God, not being a God of confusion, only has one leader. We may not like everything he does. She's human. He may make mistakes like others make mistakes, but God only has one leader. And as long as that one leader is alive, nobody else is a leader. We believe in, we pray for the Lord to move people if he has to, but until God removed that leader, it's just one leader. So individualism will insert itself into people through pride. And then somehow the devil deceive people and make them think they are a leader when they're not, as long as God got a leader. And so then they go out, get a building or whatever, not realizing that that building that they just purchased right near this building, they're only sacrificing to their own pride. And when pride get a hold of a man and he seems to have lost the grace of God, it's almost impossible to bring that back together.
All right.
Almost impossible.
If a minister, was there a question from the audience, Janine?
Not from the audience, but going back to something he said, I wanted to just confirm, as if you when you mention individualism, then what would be the basis for a person or an individual to say, okay, this is not right, let me leave? There's a lot of personal like you said, might be something that the pastor did or the pastor had done. But in these cases, or in this particular case I'm referring to, what would be the reason to leave a congregation if it's not under what the terms you said?
Okay, now that is a very good question. I think it goes back to, okay, you said what would be a good reason to leave? Let me answer that by looking at a platform there. The best of men are still just men. You take a new convert with the grace of God in his heart, his testimony is going to be, I am nothing. All right, now you take a sanctified saint, his testimony is going to be, I'm less than nothing. That is the testimony of people who have the grace of God in their heart. But we're in a time where people are losing the grace of God and pride come in. And so they begin to misjudge one another, think themselves better than others. And so I think it's a lack of humility there, because the mercy seat is open for us. And I don't think there is a saint who every night they have to go back to the mercy seat. So going back to the foundation, I think it's a lack of humility. People are losing the grace of God out of their hearts. And when problem comes, hey, I'm somebody. So when should a person leave? If it's apostasy and the leader will not return, then I think the Bible justifies that, but there is still a space where we don't go right down the street and build our shrine. Usually, I think the morning brother would say, don't build a church within 50-mile radius of another. And I'm sure in the apostle time, the churches were farther apart. So if God did call a leader because one went into apostasy, it wouldn't be right down the street. So usually people, according to the Bible, 10% return out of apostasy, if that. So that's the only reason I could see justifiable for leaving. But God wouldn't still send you right down the street.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, thanks so much. Yes.
Brother Brown, if the minister senses a split coming, what are his options? What can he or she do to veer away from that? Or what are his options, or what are his or her options?
I think the only option he has is to get in the lowest position of humility and show love, forgiveness, show a forgiving spirit, and try to keep the people together. But somebody's gonna have to show the lowest position of humility, and just show love and try to keep the people together. But definitely somebody's gonna have to get down and show the lowest position of humility. Sometimes, it takes that. As a leader, I ain't been always right. I could be wrong about something, and so I think that leader, he's going to have to be the example and just take the lowest position, the humblest position, and try to show love and keep the people together.
This next question is a bit similar. What should a church member do if they see a split coming? What are his or her options if just a church member?
As a church member, you have a spiritual parent, and try to, when it comes out to making decisions, try to stay with your spiritual, because ain't nobody gonna love you like your father and your mother. So I would say that church member, stay with your parent. Stay with your spiritual parent, because they're not, like I said, no one can love you like your spiritual parent. And I believe that what God really designed for the member to stay with their spiritual parent. So that was the advice I would give. Don't listen to a lot of things. Don't be quick to run off to who can attract the biggest crowd or who got the best argument. It's important to stay with your parent in the ministry, in your salvation. Stay with your spiritual parent. So that's the advice I would give to people. Who is your spiritual father? Stay with your spiritual parents. Because those parents are going to try to keep the home together.
Brother Brown, what are some of the causes of church splits? And I want to have this leading question in that I have a book, was written back in 2002, and I peruse it quite often. It was written in 2002, copywritten, but it goes back to 1950s, which I was born, and it's called My Pilgrimage. Page 107, second paragraph, the church split. It was about 600 people there. And the church began to split because they said the pastor was too demanding with church services and church activities. Is that a reason to split a church, do you think?
No, sir, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know, this bearing and forbearing, it seemed to be a lost thing today, but I would say absolutely not, Pastor. You know, I mean, we can look at each other and find enough fault already. So no, I don't see that. No. Where's the bearing and the forbearing at?
Next question.
It's like I said.
I'm sorry. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So it's like I said earlier. You can tell again when the grace of God is still in the people's heart, because, like I said, that justified man, he's gonna tell you, brother, I'm nothing. That sanctified man is gonna tell you, I'm less than nothing. That's the sign of grace in people's heart, and it's gonna be some forbearing there, you know, bearing and forbearing. You know, and now your rest of the lost the grace of God, you're gonna have some trouble out of them. So I wouldn't say that is the reason, especially if you see yourself as less than nothing. Work together. Work together.
Brother Brown, how can a people minister church? How can they guard against church splits? What should be their mechanism or their conduit to fight against or go around church splits?
From my experience, number one, I would say the leader should never preach his personal experience for doctrine. Anytime it seemed like, in fact, when there's any type of error, because that would be error, you're going to have, even though you're together in one building, look like unity, but whenever there's any type of area, you got evil seeds in there working. So really the work for division is already there. So I think we're going to have to stick to the pure doctrines of the Bible. Don't preach your experience for doctrine, and just abstain from all error if possible, as far as you know, because once you have any type of error being taught from the pulpit, you already got evil seeds already in there, seeds of division. It's a matter of time. It may take 10 years before, boom, it happens. But if you got any type of error in there, then you have already planted the seeds for the division. So I think to begin with, men should never preach their experience for doctrine. And then also, I believe that as pastors, and I've been guilty of this, we got to stay on the main doctrine of Christ and teaching salvation. I mean, there are times when God will help us come down the line on standard, but to me, brother, we got to learn to, as pastor, you got to stay balanced. You don't want to go to the left, that's compromise, because that's devil worship. You don't want to go to the right, that's fanaticism, that's devil worship. So either way, you're going to lose out. So I think it's important that we stay humble and stay balanced and stick with the doctrine of Christ and try not to speak things, especially on our own, that's going to divide and fight. Because I think men and women are going to always have their own opinions, no matter how saved they are. So it's important to stay balanced, stay focused on the love of God, preach the doctrine of Christ. Don't go to the left, which is compromise. Don't go to the right, which is fanaticism. So it's hard to find people, especially one that pastored a long time, to stay balanced. We got to stay balanced.
Now, I had a question from the chat, Pastor, if it's okay.
Please, if you would.
Someone asks, if there is a situation of sin, do you stay with your spiritual father or your pastor?
Okay, that is a very good question. We have to forgive one another. The best of men at the end of the day is but men. So if you as a follower sin, you repent, expect the church to forgive you. If the pastor have sinned or error and he's repented, we have to forgive one another. Pastor is just a title, but he's still a man. The best of men is still nothing but men. So to me, you got to forbear. We have to forgive one another. A pastor, he's still a man. We got to forgive. Because just sure you as a member saying you don't want the pastor to forgive. So I believe there are, we have to, and it takes humility to have that type of attitude, but the best of men is but men. So that's the way I see that, if he repents, let's work together. That you want God to forgive you as a follower. So I believe we need to work together and forgive one another.
Brother Ron, I'm sorry, please go ahead. Please continue if you would, please. Please continue.
But I would say, what if we keep on not forgiving the leader because he's the leader? I think that means we're going to have something else going on. 10 years later, you've been moving, going somewhere else. The cycle is going to keep going. So to me, we have to have enough grace of God in our hearts to forgive one another. Because nothing blocks us from going back to the mercy seat.
There's another question, I guess, to piggyback that, and that is not there power to keep us from sin?
Is there not power to keep us from sin?
Correct.
There is power to keep us from sin, but keep this in mind. We got examples in the Bible. As long as we're on this earth, we can err. That's why it takes much forbearance. Sometimes I think the enemy will trick us and he'll make us feel like I'm supernatural. I'm free from sin. Yeah, you are saved and you're free from sin, but you're not in heaven yet. You're still on the earth. And so we got to be careful to not think we're this robot and then we start looking down on others today. That's nothing but pride, carnal pride. I'm so spiritually perfect now, I'm looking down on others. So we got to be careful about this attitude where thinking that I'm that perfect, as though you're in heaven. No, you're not. You're still on the earth and you're still in the flesh. So yeah, there is something that keeps from sin, but Jesus is still an advocate because the best of men are but men at the end of the day. So I think people err when they think themselves like they're some spiritual robot and they're just perfect person. If the microscope were close enough on them, they would see they're not that perfect person. So yeah, there is a salvation that keeps from sin, but yet we're still human and we have to forbear with one another.
I have a comment.
I answer that, okay?
Please.
Yes, sir. I have a comment. Another individual said, if a pastor sins, we should forgive, but he is to be an example and he should no longer obtain his position.
Now, that's where I say bearance and forbearance, because, okay, that is a really tough thing because see, we're trying to avoid the fighting and the splits. So that's, I still say we got to have mercy. If there can be forgiveness, if there can be restoration, let's try that first. Just don't chop off a man's head. I don't think that's a good spirit. So I think it should be mercy. Let's see if there can be restoration. I know there's some people that have to be replaced, but still, we need to try restoration at all costs.
All right, we just have a very few moments left. Any more questions from our listening audience?
That's all for now.
All right. Well, dear one, again, yeah, it goes that fast. Well, I want to thank Brother Brown again for his coming here. I just met him recently, but we just seemed to hit it off, and he mentioned his background. We wanted to get him on here. And again, friends, our main focus here is to promote three things: forgiveness, healing, restoration. The pastor talked a lot about that because we want to see the church unified, and you do too. You all want that too, being our listeners.
Yes.
And do all we can to promote that. Brother Brown, any last minute concerns or inputs? Sister Tina, more questions for the audience?
We'll have one more comment. It says here, but Sam Cavan mentioned he's not speaking about the doctrine of Jesus Christ. A bishop must be blameless. We will forgive, but he cannot lead a people any longer, is his comment.
Okay, that is I guess face value scripture in the Bible, but I believe the Bible teaches that with all our getting, let's get understanding. The word blameless don't mean he's not going to ever make a mistake, So I just think we just, with all our getting, let's get understanding,
All right. Well, we want to thank our listeners for contacting us today. Pastor Brown, thank you again so much. Those who connected, thank you very much. We have a special guest next week. When I asked Brother Brown to come back in the future, he's been excellent. We have a special guest next week. You can look it up on our information. You can go to YouTube, then click in Church of God in Macon, Georgia. Special guest next week. We'll let you know more about that when you connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, or Google. So again, Wounded Hearts, Wounded Church at 7 p.m. each Thursday. And then again, dear one, we are here for three things only: not to throw stones. We are here to promote, implement ideas, discussion based on forgiveness, healing, restoration. Thank you, Ms. Lolita, our personnel director. Ms. Tennille, she handles all of our technical information. Linda Holmes, our LPN, and we're glad you all come. May the Lord bless you today. Thank you, Brother Brown, again.
You're welcome. Amen.